More than 4,000 Russian tanks and over 13,000 armored vehicles have been visually recorded as lost in the war, and that number points to a deeper crisis inside Russia's army. Moscow entered Ukraine with a massive advantage that looked almost impossible to exhaust. A Soviet-built reserve of tanks, APCs, IFVs, and armored vehicles stored across huge military depots. For decades, this stockpile was supposed to give Russia the ability to fight a long mechanized war, even after heavy losses. But after years of attrition, that advantage is shrinking fast. Storage sites that once held long rows of vehicles now look thinner. Older machines like the T-72, T-80, T-62, and even T-55 are being pulled back toward the battlefield, not as a sign of strength, but as a warning that the deeper reserve is being drained. On the front line, the danger is even clearer. Many Russian convoys no longer look like unstoppable armored spearheads. From above, they look like moving targets waiting to be mapped by Ukrainian UAVs, trapped by FPV drones, and then hit by artillery. The real shock is not only that Russia is losing armor. The bigger problem is what those losses do to the army's ability to protect infantry, move fast, and create a real breakthrough. So what happens when a military power built around massive armor reserves begins fighting like a force running short of armor? Russia's Soviet armor reserve was once the shield behind its entire ground war, but the war in Ukraine is now eating through that shield one vehicle at a time. For years, Moscow could send damaged units back from the front and replace them with machines pulled from old storage bases. A battalion that lost tanks near the fighting line could receive older T-72s. A unit short of infantry carriers could be given aging APCs or IFVs. The system was not perfect, but it gave Russian commanders a feeling that the war could continue even when battlefield losses were heavy. That reserve shaped the way Russia attacked. Armored columns were expected to move forward with tanks at the front, APCs carrying infantry close behind, and support vehicles following the same route. The idea was simple. Armor would absorb the first danger, infantry would reach the fighting area with protection, and the whole force would keep pressure on Ukrainian positions until a weak point appeared. In the early phase of the war, this method still had enough machines behind it to continue after repeated setbacks. When newer vehicles were destroyed or damaged, older platforms returned to service. T-80S, T-72S, T-62S, and even T-55S were brought back into the fight, showing how deep Russia was willing to dig into its Soviet stockpile. But the return of older tanks also revealed a serious weakness. These vehicles were not coming back because they were the best choice for modern combat. They were coming back because the demand at the front was too high, and the supply of ready armor was no longer as comfortable as Moscow once believed. On the battlefield, this pressure becomes visible before a convoy even reaches Ukrainian lines. A Russian assault group may still appear strong when it leaves a staging area. Several tanks move first. APCs follow with infantry inside. Other vehicles carry ammunition, engineers, or command teams. From the ground, it looks like mass and force. From above, it is a slow chain of expensive targets moving through roads, tree lines, and open fields. This is where the old Soviet advantage begins to break down. Large numbers only matter if those vehicles can reach the fight, stay coordinated, and keep moving under fire. In Ukraine, that is becoming harder. A reconnaissance UAV can follow the route. FPV drones can wait near the dangerous turn. Artillery can prepare for the moment when the formation slows down. Once the first vehicle is hit, the cost of every old tank becomes larger than its age. It is not just another machine removed from the inventory. This is why the depletion of Russian armor matters beyond one battle. A tank pulled from storage is not automatically a usable combat vehicle. If too many vehicles are stripped for parts, damaged in transport, or sent forward with weak protection, the reserve begins to look large on paper but thin in real use. The deeper problem is that Russia's traditional style of pressure depends on protected movement. Infantry needs armor to cross dangerous ground. If that armored base keeps shrinking, Russia can still attack, but the shape of the attack changes. That is the warning behind the old Soviet stockpile. Russia's greatest inherited advantage is not disappearing in one dramatic moment. It is being drained through repeated assaults, damaged convoys, abandoned vehicles, and machines that must be pulled from deeper and older layers of storage. The question now is not only how much armor Russia has left, but how much of it can still survive long enough to matter on a battlefield watched by drones. Russian convoys often begin losing the battle before the first shot is fired, because Ukrainian surveillance can turn movement into a target map long before direct contact. The moment a Russian assault group leaves its staging area, the risk begins to grow. A reconnaissance UAV may already be watching from above, tracking the road, the tree line, and the small gaps where armored vehicles must pass. At ground level, the movement may look organized and powerful. Tanks roll forward first, APCs carry infantry behind them, and support vehicles follow the same path to keep the push alive. From the sky, the picture is very different. The convoy becomes a moving pattern. Each turn shows direction. Each pause reveals a weak point. Each gap between vehicles tells Ukrainian operators how the formation is holding together. The tanks are no longer just heavy machines advancing toward the line. They become points on a screen, moving through terrain that limits their choices. This is why early detection matters so much. Ukraine does not always need to strike at the first moment. A UAV can stay above the route and watch the convoy travel through fields, damaged roads, forest belts, and village edges. The longer it watches, the more information it collects. It can see where the lead vehicle slows down, where the APCs tighten their spacing, and where the support vehicles begin to fall behind. That patience changes the tempo of the fight. Russian crews may believe that speed gives them protection, but speed also pushes them into predictable lanes. Heavy armor cannot move freely across every patch of ground. It must follow roads, tracks, open corridors, and cleared routes. When those routes are watched from above, the convoy loses surprise before it reaches the Ukrainian defensive line. The most dangerous places are often not the open fields, but the points where the formation must narrow. A bend in a dirt road can force vehicles to align. A tree line can hide the next turn from crews on the ground, while the UAV sees it clearly. A village edge can slow the advance, as drivers must avoid rubble, craters, and blocked streets. These details decide where the ambush can form. Once the route is understood, FPV drones can be placed into the battle plan. They do not need to chase every vehicle across the field. They can wait for the convoy to enter a place where movement becomes harder and reaction time becomes shorter. That is the moment when the battlefield starts to close around the attacker. This creates a quiet but serious problem for Russian commanders. Their assault is still moving, but control is already slipping. The route has been read. The spacing has been studied. The likely choke points have been marked. Ukrainian artillery crews and drone teams can prepare before the convoy arrives, rather than reacting after the attack begins. From inside the armored vehicles, crews may see only the road ahead and the smoke rising from earlier strikes. From above, Ukrainian operators see the full shape of the assault. They can identify the lead tank, the infantry carriers, and the support vehicles that keep the formation supplied. That wider view allows Ukraine to decide which part of the convoy matters most. This is the real change in modern armored warfare. A convoy can still have tanks, infantry, and firepower, yet lose the advantage because it is visible too early. If drone warfare has changed the way armor survives on the battlefield, the bigger question is clear. Can tanks still lead large assaults when the sky can read the convoy before the crews even see the enemy? The strike on the lead vehicle is often the moment a Russian convoy stops being an assault force and becomes a fixed target. When the column reaches a narrow road, a damaged tree line, or a mined approach, the first vehicle carries the fate of everything behind it. It is not only a tank or an armored carrier. It sets the pace, opens the route, and gives the rest of the formation a point to follow. If that vehicle keeps moving, the convoy still has rhythm. If it is hit, the entire attack begins to lose shape. This is where FPV drones become extremely dangerous. They do not need to destroy every vehicle at once. They only need to hit the right one at the right moment. A drone coming low from the side or rear can strike the lead tank, damage its engine, or force it to stop across the road. In a few seconds, the planned advance turns into a blocked lane filled with smoke and confusion. The vehicles behind face a decision they were not given time to prepare for. Some crews try to stop before they collide with the wreck. Others look for space to move around it. A few may try to push forward, hoping the column can keep its momentum. But in this kind of terrain, every choice carries danger. Moving off the track can mean mines, mud, soft ground, or an exposed side armor hit by another FPV drone. The worst part for the convoy is that hesitation spreads faster than orders. One stopped vehicle forces the next one to slow down. Then the spacing collapses. APCs carrying infantry begin to bunch together. Support vehicles lose their proper distance. Drivers wait for instructions, but the road ahead is blocked and radio traffic becomes tense. At this stage, Ukrainian artillery enters the battle with far better conditions. A moving vehicle is harder to hit, but a trapped cluster gives artillery crews a stable area to strike. The reconnaissance UAV keeps watching from above and sends fresh coordinates as the convoy stalls. The guns do not need to guess where the pressure is building. They can fire into the corridor where the armor has already lost freedom of movement. The first artillery rounds create a second layer of damage. They may not destroy every tank, but they add fear, smoke, and broken ground to a formation that is already under stress. Crews inside the vehicles hear impacts nearby, while drivers struggle to understand whether the path ahead still exists. A new crater or burning vehicle can close the only gap that remained open. FPV drones then return to finish what the first strike started. They hunt the vehicles still trying to move. A tank turning around shows its weaker rear section. An APC trying to squeeze past a wreck exposes its side. A support vehicle stopping in the wrong place can become the next target. The attack no longer looks like one clean ambush. It becomes a chain reaction. This is the tactical trap Ukraine tries to create. FPV drones break the rhythm. Artillery punishes the pause. The UAV keeps the whole scene under control, and every new movement gives another target to the system. For Russian commanders, the cost is not only the vehicle destroyed at the front. The deeper loss is control. Once the lead platform is down and the road is blocked, the convoy cannot act as one force. Each crew begins to make its own decision, and that is when an armored assault built for speed turns into a line of machines waiting under fire. When the convoy breaks apart, the danger shifts from destroyed armor to exposed soldiers trying to survive in open ground. After the first vehicles burn and the road becomes blocked, the Russian formation no longer moves like a single unit. Some crews try to steer around the wreckage, but the space is too narrow and the ground beside the road may be mined, soft, or watched by drones. Other vehicles begin to turn back, and that movement creates a new problem. A tank or APC that rotates under pressure can expose its side, rear, or engine area, which gives FPV drones a better angle to strike. This is the moment when panic spreads through the column. The crews in the rear may not understand what happened at the front. They see smoke, dust, and stopped vehicles, but they cannot see the full battlefield. Infantry inside the APCs hear impacts nearby, and they must choose whether to remain under armor or jump out before the next drone arrives. Neither option is safe, because the protection that carried them forward has now become part of the trap. Command also begins to weaken at the worst possible time. Orders that made sense before the ambush no longer match the scene on the road. One vehicle tries to reverse, another turns toward a tree line, and a third waits for space that never opens. The convoy loses its shared rhythm, and each crew starts acting on fear, instinct, and limited visibility. That is when a mechanized assault stops being organized pressure and becomes a crowd of separated targets. For the infantry, leaving the vehicles may feel like the only chance. soldiers rush toward the edge of a forest, crawl into drainage cuts, or hide beside damaged armor. Some may use the wrecks as cover, because a burned tank looks safer than open ground. But on a battlefield covered by UAVs, those hiding places can turn into markers. Movement near a forest edge can be seen from above, and a group gathering beside a destroyed vehicle can reveal exactly where the survivors are. FPV drones then change their role. Earlier, they were used to stop armor and break the road. Now they begin hunting smaller signs of life. A soldier jumping out of a damaged APC and sprinting toward the tree line can quickly become the next target once a FPV tracks his movement from above. Two Russian troops trying to cross a drainage ditch may believe the lower ground hides them from danger, but a FPV drone only needs a few seconds to follow that movement and dive toward the position. A larger infantry group waiting under trees after leaving a burning vehicle can also attract attention because the drones above are searching for clusters of movement, heat, and temporary shelter areas near the battlefield. Artillery adds more pressure by making the escape area unstable. Rounds landing near the road can push survivors away from the vehicles, while fire near the tree line can deny the route they are trying to reach. This creates a cruel battlefield pattern. Armor is too dangerous to stay inside, but the ground outside is already being watched. The infantry is forced into a space where every choice can expose them. Once armor fails to protect the men behind it, the entire logic of the assault begins to fail. The battlefield no longer punishes only the machine. It follows the soldiers who were depending on that machine to survive. Satellite images of Russian storage bases show that the convoy crisis is not only happening on the front line, it reaches deep into the military system behind the war. In many storage areas, the old picture was simple. Long rows of tanks, APCs, and IFVs stood in open yards, waiting to be repaired, moved, or stripped for parts. These machines were once a quiet promise that Russia could keep sending armor forward even after heavy losses. But that picture is changing. Some lots now look thinner, while others show vehicles that appear damaged, incomplete, or too old to return quickly. This matters because a tank in storage is not the same as a tank ready for battle. A vehicle may still have a hull, but it may need an engine, optics, tracks, radios, armor parts, or a working gun. If several vehicles are stripped to repair one usable machine, the visible number can look larger than the real combat value. That is the hidden problem behind the storage sites. Russia may still have old armor, but not every vehicle can become part of a real assault. This pressure helps explain the change seen near the front. When enough armored vehicles are available, commanders can plan attacks around protection and speed. Tanks can lead, APCs can carry infantry, and support vehicles can help the force keep moving after contact. When that base weakens, the shape of the assault changes. More soldiers are pushed forward on foot, in civilian vehicles, on ATVs, or on motorcycles. These lighter methods can keep pressure on Ukrainian positions, but they cannot replace armor in the same way. A motorcycle can move fast through a dirt track, but it cannot shield a soldier from shrapnel. An ATV can cross a field quickly, but it offers almost no protection when a UAV is watching above. A civilian vehicle may carry troops closer to the line, but once artillery lands nearby, it becomes a fragile target. The battlefield then becomes harsher for Russian infantry. Without strong armored cover, troops must rely more on speed, terrain, smoke, and timing. They may move through forest belts, rush between ruined houses, or wait near small roads for the next push. Yet the same drone network that hunts tanks can also read these lighter movements. What looks flexible on the ground can still become visible from the air. Ukraine has helped force this shift by striking not only combat vehicles, but also the routes and support systems that keep them useful. FPV drones damage armor near the fighting line. Artillery punishes clusters that stop in narrow corridors. Precision strikes against logistics make it harder to move fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and recovery teams at the speed a mechanized force needs. That creates a slow chain effect. Each loss on the road reaches back into storage, repair shops, transport units, and command planning. This is why Russia's move toward infantry-heavy assaults should not be seen as only a tactical choice. It is also a sign of pressure. Moscow still needs to attack, hold initiative, and test Ukrainian defenses, but it may not always have the armored weight to do it in the older way. The result is a battlefield where smaller and cheaper vehicles carry more of the burden. The question now is whether Russia can adapt faster than Ukraine can destroy the remaining armored system. If Moscow improves drone defense, recovery work, and battlefield coordination, some mechanized strength may survive. If not, the Soviet stockpile may keep shrinking into a reserve that exists on paper, while the real fight is carried by infantry, motorcycles, and vehicles never designed to replace tanks. Russia's tank reserve is not disappearing in one dramatic collapse. It is being drained convoy by convoy, repair yard by repair yard, and assault by assault. This story is not only about old T-72s, T-80s, T-62s, or even T-55s being pulled back from storage. It is about a military advantage built over decades, now facing a battlefield where movement is watched from above and punished within minutes. Ukraine is using FPV drones to detect the convoy early, trap the formation, then let FPV drones and artillery attack the force layer by layer. The effect reaches far beyond the burning wrecks. When armor becomes harder to replace, Russian infantry must rely more on ATVs, civilian vehicles, motorcycles, and foot movement. These methods can keep pressure on the line, but they cannot fully replace the protection, speed, and shock power of armored vehicles. The future remains open. Tanks are not finished, but the old way of using them is under serious pressure. If Russia cannot protect its convoys from UAVs and FPV drones, its Soviet stockpile may keep turning from a strategic advantage into a costly burden. So what do you think? Is this only one phase of the Ukraine war, or has the age of large armored assaults changed forever? For more clear analysis on weapons, battles, and the geopolitical shocks shaping today's war, like, share, and subscribe to Military Force.